Alright. Huh?
I'll show you my ID.
If you don't mind, just so, yeah, if you don't mind, can we see your ID?
Yeah.
That's a slick business card.
Yep.
Alright. I'll give it to him. You can keep doing what you're doing. We're just...
Ma'am, we're going to need to see some identification. Pause for a second. Imagine standing in your own front yard, keys still in your hand, work bag on your shoulder, and hearing that from two police officers who just walked up to you like you don't belong there. That's exactly where this story begins. It's a quiet afternoon, no chaos, no noise, just a calm residential street, and Danielle Carter, 38, stepping out of her car after a long day in court. She's still dressed sharp, heels clicking softly against the pavement, a legal file tucked under her arm. Everything about her says composed, controlled, professional. Until the patrol car pulls up. At first, she barely notices it. Why would she? She's home. But then the doors open. Two officers step out. Their eyes lock onto her immediately. And just like that, the energy shifts. They don't greet her like a homeowner. They don't ask if everything's okay. Instead, they approach with a kind of quiet authority that feels misplaced. Do you live here? Simple question, but something about it feels loaded. Danielle answers calmly, "Yes, I do." That should be the end of it, right? It's not, because the next thing they say doesn't match the situation at all. "Can we see your ID?" Now think about that. She's not on the street, she's not driving, she's not inside a store. She's standing on her own property, her own land. So why are they asking? And more importantly, why do they sound like they expect her to comply? Danielle pauses, not out of fear, but calculation. You can almost see it in her face, the way her expression tightens just slightly, the way her posture shifts. Because here's what they don't know yet. Danielle Carter isn't just any homeowner. She's a civil rights attorney. And in that moment, something clicks. This isn't just an awkward interaction anymore. This is a test of knowledge, of authority, of boundaries. So she asks a simple question back. "Am I being detained?" The officers glance at each other. It's quick, subtle, but it's there. And suddenly, the situation isn't so simple anymore. Because now, it's not just about an ID. It's about who actually understands the law and who doesn't. And what happens next is where everything starts to unravel. Before we continue with this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for updates. What happens when the person you're questioning knows the law better than you do? The air shifts the moment Danielle asks it. Am I being detained? It's a simple question, direct, controlled, but it lands like a challenge. Officer Mark Reynolds stiffens slightly. Officer Tyler Briggs glances at him just for a second, like he's waiting for direction. That hesitation, Danielle notices it immediately. Because hesitation means uncertainty, and uncertainty changes everything. Reynolds clears his throat. "We just got a call about a suspicious person in the area. We're just trying to figure out what's going on." Danielle doesn't move, not an inch. "A suspicious person standing in her own yard?" she asks calmly. There's no sarcasm, no raised voice, just precision. Briggs steps forward this time, trying to regain control. "Ma'am, if you could just show us your ID, we can clear this up quickly." That word again, just. As if it's nothing, as if rights are optional. Danielle tilts her head slightly. "I've already told you I live here," she says. "You have no legal basis to demand identification from me on private property." Now the tension is visible. Reynolds' jaw tightens, his posture shifts. This isn't going the way he expected. Across the street, a curtain moves. Then a door opens. Linda Hayes, 55, steps out onto her porch, watching closely. She folds her arms, clearly invested in what's happening. And just like that, another layer is added to the situation. Reynolds gestures subtly in her direction. "We received a call from a concerned neighbor," he says. Danielle follows his glance. Their eyes meet for a brief moment. And in that moment, everything clicks. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. Someone saw her, didn't recognize her, and decided she didn't belong. Danielle exhales slowly, grounding herself. "So instead of verifying who actually lives here," she says, turning back to the officers, "you approached me as a suspect." Briggs's tone sharpens. "Ma'am, you're refusing a lawful request." And there it is, the contradiction. Danielle catches it instantly. "No, I'm refusing an unlawful one." A beat of silence, the kind that feels heavy. Reynolds steps closer now, too close. His presence is meant to intimidate. It's subtle but deliberate. "If you don't cooperate, we may have to detain you." Now pause. Think about that. Detained for standing in your own yard? Danielle doesn't flinch. Instead, she looks him directly in the eye and asks the question again. "Am I being detained or am I free to go?" This time, the silence stretches longer, because now they know she's not backing down, and they're about to make a decision that could change everything. That silence, it's not just awkward anymore, it's dangerous. Because when authority hesitates, it usually means one of two things. They're about to back down, or they're about to double down. And in this case, they doubled down. Officer Briggs reaches for his radio, smooth, casual, but deliberate. "Dispatch, I've got a female, mid-30s, refusing to identify." "Stop." Danielle's voice cuts through his transmission like a blade. Not loud, not aggressive, just precise. "On what legal basis are you running my information?" she asks. Briggs freezes mid-sentence, just for a split second, but it's enough. Reynolds steps in quickly, trying to regain control of the narrative. "We're conducting an investigation," he says. "We have reasonable suspicion." Reasonable suspicion. It sounds official. It sounds justified. But Danielle doesn't react the way they expect. Instead, she leans slightly forward, her eyes locked on his. "Of what crime?" she asks. That's it. That's the question. And suddenly, there's no clear answer. Reynolds hesitates again. Briggs lowers the radio slowly, because now they're stuck. They've made a claim, but they can't support it, and Danielle knows it. You can see it in the way she straightens her posture, in the calm confidence that starts to take over the space. The balance is shifting. But then another patrol car pulls up. Doors open. 2 more officers step out. Now it's 4 against 1, and the energy, it changes instantly. What was tense becomes overwhelming. What was questionable now feels intentional. Danielle scans the scene for a moment. 4 officers, one narrative forming, pressure building. This is how situations escalate, not always with shouting, sometimes with numbers. So she does something that changes everything. She reaches into her bag and pulls out her phone, and she starts recording. The reaction is immediate. You can see it, the subtle shifts, the glances, the tightening expressions. Because now, this isn't just a conversation anymore, it's evidence. Danielle angles the camera toward herself first, calm, controlled. "My name is Danielle Carter. I'm standing on my own property, and I'm being asked to identify myself without any stated legal cause." Then she slowly turns the camera toward the officers, and that's when she adds the line that flips the entire situation. "I'm also a civil rights attorney." Silence. Real silence this time. Not confusion, not hesitation, recognition. Because now they understand exactly who they're dealing with, and more importantly, what this could become.
Reynolds exhales sharply, running a hand along his jaw. Briggs looks away for a moment. The backup officers, suddenly less certain. And Danielle? She doesn't raise her voice, she doesn't move aggressively. She just holds the camera steady and delivers one final sentence. "I'm documenting this for a potential lawsuit." And just like that, the situation is no longer under their control. It's bigger now, much bigger, and they know it. The air feels heavier now, thicker with tension. 4 officers, 1 homeowner, and the weight of the law itself, all colliding on a quiet suburban street. Danielle doesn't flinch, her phone still recording. She's calm, steady, every word deliberate. But inside, the adrenaline is sharp, precise, her mind racing through statutes, precedents, and rights. Officer Reynolds attempts to regain control, clearing his throat. "Ma'am, we're just doing our job. You need to cooperate. This can be resolved quickly." Danielle doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she steps slightly toward her front door, subtly reminding them whose property this is. "I am cooperating," she says finally. "I've answered your questions. I've stated that I live here. What more do you need from me?" Her tone is calm, but carries the weight of authority. Briggs fidgets, voice lowering. "You're refusing a lawful request." "That's incorrect," Danielle interrupts smoothly. "I am refusing an unlawful one. You have no probable cause, you have no warrant, and you cannot compel identification on private property absent criminal activity." Her words are surgical, precise. In that instant, the power dynamic shifts. The officer's certainty cracks. Across the street, Linda Hayes watches, hands wringing slightly. Her concern becomes guilt as she realizes the gravity of what she set in motion. She steps toward the edge of her porch, but Danielle doesn't flinch. She understands the human side of this too. And then, the moment that changes everything. A third voice enters, calm but commanding. Sergeant Daniel Ortiz, 50, arrives. His presence alone cuts through the tension like a knife. He surveys the scene, officers fidgeting, Danielle composed, phone recording every interaction. "Officers, are we following procedure? Is there a legal basis for detainment or ID request here?" The officers falter, unable to articulate a coherent answer. Every misstep, every assumption they made is now undeniable. Danielle remains silent for a beat, letting the law speak through her posture, her calm demeanor, the recording in her hand. "I am fully aware of my rights, and I expect them to be respected." The sergeant turns to Reynolds and Briggs, his expression firm. "Step back. You're done here." A wave of relief courses through Danielle, but she doesn't move yet. She lets the silence sink in. The officers retreat. No raised voices, no escalation, just acknowledgement. This isn't just a victory in the moment. It's a reminder of the boundaries that exist between citizens and those sworn to enforce the law. And for Danielle, it's validation, not just of her rights, but of her profession, her knowledge, and her persistence. The situation, once teetering on the edge of conflict, finally diffuses. But the consequences of the day are only just beginning to unfold. Finally, the tension breaks. Sergeant Ortiz's words hang in the air like a verdict. "Step back. You're done here." A wave of relief courses through Danielle, her phone lowering slowly, the red recording light still glowing. A small, quiet triumph. In that moment, clarity settles over her. She had been right all along. The situation began with a call, a vague report, a neighbor's discomfort, but it escalated into something far more serious. Reynolds and Briggs had acted on assumption, bias, and a false sense of control. They demanded identification from a woman who had committed no crime, standing firmly on her own property. But Danielle knew her rights, she knew the law, and she exercised them with unwavering precision. The record is now clear. She was not only within her rights, she had exposed a serious procedural failure. Emotionally, the release is profound. Relief floods her body, but there's also frustration. The officer's insistence, the intimidation, the unnecessary escalation. It all could have ended differently if she hadn't remained composed. But the validation, the acknowledgement that her knowledge and presence of mind protected her, brings a surge of empowerment. Danielle smiles faintly, her hands finally unclenching. The consequences follow swiftly. Within days, she files a formal complaint. The department reviews the body cam and her own recording. Officer Reynolds faces disciplinary action for violating procedural protocols. Officer Briggs is sent for retraining on constitutional rights and lawful detainment. Public statements are made, protocols reinforced, and the story circulates online, sparking conversations about the limits of police authority, property rights, and racial bias. Danielle becomes a voice in the discussion, her experience transforming into advocacy. Even her relationship with the neighbor, Linda Hayes, shifts. Tension remains, yes, but clarity replaces confusion. Actions have consequences, assumptions have costs, and the narrative of a neighborhood now includes accountability. Finally, Danielle stands in her yard once more. The quiet of her street feels restored. She reflects, not as a victim, not as someone who endured intimidation, but as someone who confronted the system and emerged with her dignity intact. Her day, her rights, and her authority as both a homeowner and a lawyer have been defended. The ordeal has passed, and with it, the clarity that knowing your rights is more than power, it is protection. And as she looks toward her front door, the weight lifts entirely. The law she studied, the principles she's practiced, and the courage she carried all converge. Danielle steps inside, leaving the yard and the confrontation behind, resolved and whole. Justice was not abstract that day. It was personal, immediate, and completely undeniable.